Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
Thank you, Scott. Yes, today I'm excited to welcome our guest, Justin Loutfy. I hope I pronounced that right. Justin is a husband, he's a girl dad, a former executive, and also a special warfare veteran. He's also an author, a coach, and an Ironman. He recently published a book called Never Outworked, which shows the world that it doesn't matter your circumstance, your color, your background. You can live a purposeful and fulfilling life if you refuse to be outworked. In business, he owns a property management company that has a little over 7 million in assets under management, coaches military veterans on how to invest in real estate, and hosts a mastermind for small business owners. Welcome, Justin, to our show.
Thank you. Man, that was, you got the whole list there. You were close though. It's Loutfy. But
Loutfy,
everyone
okay.
everyone
Thank
pronounces
you.
it Loutfy, so you're normal. You're in the same boat as everyone who reads it.
Cool. So tell us just a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and then how you got. I mean, I'm super intrigued by the special warfare things. I don't know whether there's some things you're unable to talk about, but just tell us a little bit about that.
For sure. Well, I'll tell you, I originally enlisted in the Air Force when I was 19 years old as an Air Force mechanic. And I kind of worked my way up until I was able to commission. And when I became an officer, I said, you know what? I want to be on the ground with the guys who are bringing the fight to our enemies. And that's in special warfare. Special warfare is a really like an all-encompassing umbrella for the Air Forcers, TACPs, PJs, and combat controllers. For the Navy, you've got like your Navy SEALs, your EOD guys, and then the Army has an Army Rangers, Green Berets. So special warfare is just this big umbrella that everyone fits under that's in that group. I loved it because it was a very small knit community of just really hardworking people, like working together, competing to bring out the best in each other every day. And I got to do that for 5 years in Colorado and then all over the world. And that's how I ended my military career.
Wow. So you probably have some pretty amazing stories of places you've been and things you've done being in that realm, right? I mean, those guys, you are in the absolute peak of technique and ability and shape and equipment. I don't know what else you'd say. And just amazing people that do things that most of America don't know about and therefore don't appreciate it as much as it should be. So thank you for your service. I think that's cool.
Thank you. Well, what I love about that environment, and it's a concept that what helped me in business and even in coaching, is an idea of competitive excellence. So competitive excellence is, when everyone in that circle is very competitive, very like type A, trying to be the best, but yet I want to be the best so that I can raise the bar of the room. I want to be the best, and then I also want to help you get better. So that competition just keeps rising and rising. And that's a concept that was taught to me by one of our fitness coaches when I was in Colorado as a TACP. And it's the one that I just love today. I thought about becoming a pilot when I was in college, but truth is, like, pilots, especially fighter pilots, just you and the jet. Like, you're in there by yourself. And I realized I was a very team-minded person. And so although I was very competitive, I also needed a team environment. And that's where those two really met.
Excellent. So you did that for 5 years, and then how did you go from that arena into real estate?
That's a that's a tough jump. So in the middle, I'll tell you, I got out and I did what most military people do. They look at jobs that fit their resume. So I put everything on that piece of paper and I said, okay, I'm best suited for operations. I oversaw operations in Kuwait and Iraq and Korea, like all over the world. We're able to make this. We oversaw operations. So I said, okay, let me go work as an operations manager. And I worked my way up until I was COO of a middle market company. And I realized at that point, I had nowhere to go. Like, I was like, what do I do now? I didn't want to go back to a big company. I had worked for Amazon for a bit. And I realized that I loved working in those small middle market companies because it's very like family oriented, very tight knit. They're very Christian. Like I really loved being in that environment. And so I was looking for an outlet or a way to grow. And that's where I really started to learn about real estate, learn about all the different ways you can create cash, and also learn about all the ways that you can grow wealth over time. And I was pointed towards a course run by a good friend, Buddy Rushing, called the White Feather Accelerator, that helped teach vets how to invest in real estate from personal finances all the way into like advanced tax strategies.
And your first deal was good, or it go south?
Well, I'll tell you, I knew I was in a, when you're going into real estate, there's two avenues. I tell people you're either in, I would need to create cash or I need to invest cash. Two very separate techniques, two very separate approaches to real estate. And so I started in the, I want to create cash. And I learned about this concept called wholesaling, where you get a great deal under contract and then you just sell that contract to somebody else, somebody who's looking to invest cash. And so I went on the hunt to find a really great wholesale deal because I learned in a prior course, somebody had closed a wholesale deal that netted them $50,000. And I said, okay, I want to beat that number. Like I told you, I'm competitive. And
On your
so
first deal, you wanted to beat that one on your first deal?
that was my goal. It was a 6 month
Awesome.
course. And I was like, all right, this is what I want to go after. And so over a 3 month period, I made 124 offers all across Florida and Alabama until I landed on a portfolio deal of 11 townhomes right on the beach in Daytona that negotiated back and forth with the owner, who was a hard money lender who had foreclosed on these homes, until I got it to the point that it was $2.2 million off of the retail. And that created a wholesale that netted $600,000 of wholesale fee.
And you did it.
Yeah,
You
we
are
closed it.
awesome. That's cool. You certainly have beat some of our wholesale deals that we've done, Scott and Carter and I. Um, we're very familiar with the concept. So were you doing a lot of cold calling? What was it that you were doing to find your deals?
So I just started online and looking on what's on Zillow and Redfin. And I was still working full time running this company. So every night when my kids would go to bed, I'd start scrolling through and looking for homes. And then every morning, because I'm in California, I'd wake up at 6 or go to the office at 6, and I would start calling Florida and Alabama because it'd be 9 a.m. there, and making offers on these homes that I saw online because I was looking for a turnkey property that would make for a great rental. I went down the avenue of like calling foreclosures or calling off market properties, but I was like, you know what? There's all these homes that are for sale that people aren't buying. Let me try to negotiate a deal with those.
So simply like an MLS listing. Well, Zillow, yeah, okay. And so something that's been on the market for a while, and then you would offer a lower price or something you felt like, well, I could get it at this price. For those that don't know wholesaling, so you go out, like you said, you get a deal, and basically buy and sell the property on the same day, essentially, or you can sell the contract and they buy it directly. I mean, I don't know how you do it, but
The way that I describe it is, say you have a home that's worth $200,000 and I get it under contract for $150,000. That's $50,000 of space that, anybody would be excited to jump into because then it's a great deal. So if I make it $175,000, but I sell it for, $175,000, I make 25 grand, and then the buyer walks into $25,000 of free equity. So now we've created a win-win-win situation where the seller got to sell a home they were having trouble selling. The buyer that I sold it to walks into 25 grand of free equity, and then I make $25,000 in one transaction just by negotiating.
so you set out to do this. You do your first deal and you net $600,000 out of it, and it's all been uphill from there. Or have there been other ones that have been more difficult? I mean, tell us. I mean, everything you've said so far, Justin. It's just like you're killer. You're awesome. You're competitive. Have you ever had a failure?
Oh, of course.
Well, tell us
Of
a little bit
course.
about one of these
Yeah.
deals or something that went south. What you learned from it.
So from that, we wholesaled 11 homes, and we stood up a short-term rental management company. So now we have this management company that not only do we have to learn how to put together, but also run and furnish 11 beachside homes in Daytona, all a little bit different because we can't have them all look exactly the same. And so we ran into so many different hurdles that I ended up putting probably $50,000 out of my own pocket to make sure these got fixed and finished, where we had a contractor who stole like 20 to 30 grand from us. We had stuff that didn't come in, didn't show up. And so then I wanted to make sure this was right. And because we netted so much money in the wholesale, I felt that it was my responsibility to do so. And so I was flying out to Daytona probably 4 or 5 times within the last year to make sure that everything happened properly so that we could get it to the point where it is today, where like if you go to travelbellavita.com, you'll see all of our listings are gorgeous, doing great. And now we're really hitting our stride as a short-term rental management company. But it wasn't beautiful. Like it wasn't like everything came super easy. It was a climb.
So, from your experience now, in the event you could boil it down to, what would you say the three top lessons you have learned from being in the, wholesaling and long-term rental market?
I'll give you one. I think when people go out to set up this sort of life, because you look at real estate as an opportunity. Real estate is a vehicle that can provide for you a great life, but understand that the life that you want to achieve or the life that you're setting out to do is great. Like it's atop this mountain. In order to get there, you have to climb the mountain, like going uphill, like climbing these boulders, going through all that. You're going to run into these obstacles. You can't think that just buying a home is going to be as simple as I invest in a home, it's going to work out great and create a cash flow for me. You're trying to create something greater, you're going to run into obstacles. And in real estate, it's no different. We own some short-term rentals, we own some long-term rentals, we own this property management company. All three of those have had their hurdles, but they're hurdles that, they're just a step. They're one step forward towards the goals, towards the life that we're trying to build.
Okay. What would you say has been the funnest part of this whole endeavor? Because
I think the
you
most
talked about in the Air Force, you wanted to be on a team and you wanted to stay in small corporate America because you wanted the family team thing. Has it been similar in this, or what's been the fun part for you?
the place that I really love right now, and kind of what I really cherish the most, is everything I do now is with my family. So anything that I do with real estate, I do with my brother Ryan. Anything that has to do with our short-term rentals gets done with my wife. When you look at the book, Never Outworked, like that cover art and inside and outside, like that was designed by my wife. The whole book was edited by my sister. When we go out to Daytona to furnish these homes, like I take my kids with me so that they get to see that stuff. So everything I do now is with my family. And so that home team is really reinforced over and over again.
I love that. That's been our goals too. We do a lot as a family when it has to the business and real estate, and this whole podcast has been a result of Scott's insistence and Scott's idea that, hey, let's do this together. And it's been really cool being a father and son and doing these things. So you mentioned the book, unless Never Be Outworked, right? Or never, that's not right. Never Be Outworked. Tell us a little bit about the book.
So Never Outworked. Originally, I'll tell you, as a father, my biggest fear is that we reach this level of success, and how do you teach your kids like hard work? How do you teach your kids the lessons you learned through all these adverse situations? Because all of the dark stories or things that you went through don't always come up as dinner conversation. Those things don't just strike up conversation with you and your children. And so I started writing down these stories that, really helped build me along the way. Because I wanted somewhere that my girls can go read and see, okay, this is how we got here. Like this is the path that really brought us to this point in life. And as I started to write and kind of pull those things out of me, I realized that the lessons I learned weren't just good for my girls, but would be good for everybody to learn to read. And so then I started to kind of shift my mindset and say, all right, how can I write this in a way that's going to show the world like it doesn't matter where you come from, because in this country, you still have the opportunity to make your life whatever you want it to be. No matter how old you are, what you've gone through in life, you just have to put in the work.
I love that. And I'm hoping you need to tell me there are stories from Iraq and the different places you were, right?
There are.
Cool.
Yes.
Because Jocko that wrote Extreme Ownership, and talking about owning up everything that who you are and what you do. It's really cool because he has some military stories in there too, and that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. So, Never Worked is on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is.
Is it on Audible? Is it Kindle? What?
Right now, just paperback and Kindle on Amazon, but we are looking to put it on Audible soon.
And it will be your voice, right?
I'm on the fence about that one. I don't know, because I'm a little worried. I start reading and then I struggle over my own words, and I said,
So
"Well,
I'm raising my hand and voting that you should do it. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, you sound like you got a great voice for it.
I appreciate it."
I was at a mastermind a few weeks ago down in Vegas, and we had this discussion, right? And there was a publicist there who helps people publish books and things, and she said that the statistics are like way to one side, that especially if the book helps bring people to you, like boomerangs back to your business. When it's not your voice, there's a tendency for them to pull back because they feel like, well, I got to know this person by the voice through the book. And then when they talk to you on the phone or a Zoom or something, and it's a different voice, it I don't know. That she was a huge advocate. Says, doesn't matter. I
It's
don't
a
think
fair
I like
point.
my voice, right? I don't like my voice. No one else likes their own voice, except maybe one or two people I know. But she says, from a trust and business point of view, it's off the charts better to do it yourself. So
And I think in my favorite um, audiobook is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. And he reads the whole thing himself. And it's just his life story, but also he's able to just to add in and talk about how he was feeling in that moment that don't really see that in the text. But because he's just talking through and reading, like that shows. And it makes it one of my favorite. He's also a phenomenal storyteller. So
oddly enough, she used that as one of the examples. So let's come back then. I know we got sidetracked there. Tell us a few of the stories, though, or a couple of the lessons, if you will, from your book. So I want
well,
to kind of give a little bit of a teaser here. We get people from our listeners to buy it and learn from it.
Well, I'll tell you my favorite, and what I start this off with is a story of me and my pop, because my parents divorced when I was really young. They got married when they were 19, had me when they were 20 years old. Not the greatest math equation for longevity. So they both divorced when I was really young. And so when my dad would come around and pick me up, he would always try to make it really special. He'd take me to like Fairmount Park when we'd ride bikes on the same path that you see Rocky go run in the movies. But my absolute favorite thing that we would do is he would pick me up, we'd pick up sandwiches, and then drive to the end of the runway at Philadelphia Airport and watch the airplanes take off as we ate our lunch. And sometimes the airplanes would go right over top of your head, and you would think they were so close you could just reach up and touch it. And I may have been only like 6 or 7 years old, but that became a foothold for me of something that I always went back to, because when I would go through times that I was having trouble with, I would drive to the closest airport and runway and watch planes take off. So when I was in college, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to become a pilot or go into special warfare, which was a big decision because everybody works really hard to become a fighter pilot. And I had that right in front of me to be able to do that. But I drove down to the closest airfield and watched C-130s take off until I sat and decided. I was like, okay, you know what? My heart is, I want to be on the ground. I'm going to go do that. And then the same thing happened when I decided I wanted to get out of the Air Force. That was a hard decision as well, because I was faced with this decision. Okay, do you want to move to Hawaii and live there for 3 years, which sounded phenomenal? or like get out and be home more and pursue another venture. And so I did the same exact thing. I drove down to an airfield, watched the airplanes take off. And so it created this foothold that I constantly went back to in hard times. And which is something that really helped guide me along the way. And I realized, as parents, we really need to create those memories over and over again and really try to just spend the time with our kids, because you never know what it is they're going to pull from that they're going to go back to and say, all right, this is my place. This is my place of solace. I'm going to figure out where I want to go from here.
That's a great story. Makes me want to get the book already. So what kind of things have you been doing with your daughters that may or may not, I mean, that's repetitive, because obviously that was something that you did over and over again.
Yep.
Is there habits and stuff that you're starting to develop with your daughters that may or may not be?
So I'll tell you right now, I live 5 miles from my dad, which is the closest I've ever lived to in my entire life. And there is a diner at a local airport that just sits right on the edge of the runway. So I take my girls to that diner, and they love sitting there and watching the airplanes take off. They'll be eating their eggs and just going as they fly by every single time. And so the fact that I got to do that with them, and then also bring my dad to see it with the 4 of us together, like that was the most amazing feeling for me.
That's cool. Okay, keep going with something else from the book. Because it sounds like, never outworked. There's an edge to that. Like,
That's fair.
You've really got to grit and go after it, and don't let anybody beat you. There's a competitive edge to that. So what else is?
We've kind of talked about all the highlights. I'll give you a low light in this one. When I was 18 years old, I got a full scholarship to go swim at the local state college. On the first day of school, I got arrested, kicked out, and lost my scholarship. And when I say I got arrested, I don't mean that I got put in the drunk tank. Like, I got arrested, thrown in an orange jumpsuit, and put in a jail cell with 2 men who were about 20 years older than me and probably had 100 pounds on me each. And so I was in this point that it was a low point. Like, it was a very, very low point for me. And after I was there for about 12 hours, I had accepted that this was going to be like my new home. I was like, I need to figure out how to adapt and be here. I hadn't eaten anything. I had given my food away to the biggest guy in the room, hoping that would like create a relationship where I wouldn't get hurt. And when I decided I was okay, all right, I'm going to be here, I started doing push-ups because I was like 150 pounds, 18 years old. Like, I was like, all right, well, I need to get some strength to me. I'm going to start doing push-ups. And the way this jail cell was set up was I was on this top second floor, and then on the bottom was this kind of common area where you had a bunch of picnic tables, all the phones on the walls. And so I was like, all right, I need to get down and kind of figure out the lay of the land, I learn about where I am. And I saw there was a group of men playing cards. And now I grew up playing cards all the time. Like, my family would get together. Every time we get together, we play cards. And so I said, you know what? This is a good avenue for me to kind of work my way in and network and meet people and make some friends. And so I sat down at this table and I said, hey, can I play with you? What are you guys playing? They said, we're playing Tonk. And I had no idea what it was. And so I said, well, can you explain the game to me? And so they started teaching me, and I got the hang of it really quickly. And I started to get comfortable and really start like playing and joking and playing cards with these men. And my roommate or my cellmate came along. He put his hand on my shoulder. He said, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, okay, no problem. So he pulls me aside and we walk back up to the cell. He turns around, he looks me dead in the eye. He said, look, this is not where you want to be. Like, this is not where you're supposed to be. This isn't you. And he gave me this lecture, and we talked about how he had been there for so long. He missed so much part of his life. Like, he missed so many birthdays. He missed anniversaries, like people being born, all while he sat in this box. But it took, like, as I thought I was going to get comfortable in this, it took him pulling me aside and say, hey, this isn't where you're supposed to be. Like, you don't belong here. You should not get comfortable in this position. For me to really sit down and be like, okay, like, let me adjust. This isn't my home. I need to figure things out here.
Wow. And so how long did you end up being there?
I was there for like 2 days. So I wasn't there, were maybe 36 hours, probably longest 36 hours of my life. I think I lost like 17 pounds in that time frame from just being scared and not eating or anything. But yeah, I got bailed out by my dad and like went through the whole process and everything got put down to a misdemeanor. But I tell people that was really this kind of like life-shaking event for me because I was on a bad path. Like I was a troublesome kid who had got arrested multiple times before, like got into all this trouble because I was really rebelling out, looking for love, looking for attention, and kind of going about it all the wrong ways. And I had to hit this really rock bottom before I was like, okay, I need to fix things.
How did you go from there to, or what was it that got you from there to the Air Force?
So, as you can imagine, getting kicked out of college and getting arrested does not make for a great resume. I had a hard time finding a job after that because I'm going through this court process and I needed to find a job because I wasn't going to school and I was 18 years old now. And so I became a door-to-door salesman. And so I was doing door-to-door sales for a company called Power Windows and Siding, where I'd be that guy that'd show up to your house and say, "Hey, we're doing some work in the area. While we're here, we can give you a free estimate on your windows and siding." And every time I signed somebody up to get a free estimate, we'd make $300. And so the number to hit during the day was three. If you hit three sales in the day, then you'd come back, you'd ring the bell, everybody would cheer. But I was not really good at this at first because I was super uncomfortable knocking on people's doors. So what I realized was I had to work harder and faster than everybody else. Because I was a little younger, I could move faster. And because I had nothing to lose, I just started packing my lunch instead of going out to lunch with all the guys. And so that gained me more time until the point where I became the best salesman in the room simply because I was hitting more doors than everybody else. And at one point I had made the like best salesman across the country because I took this for months on end. And so I'm working my way up this company to the point where they asked me to open up some new office in New York. So I moved up to New York City for a little bit and help open up a new office and do that there and like really crushing it in this sales gig. And so we hit about November and I like, you know what, let me go home for Thanksgiving. And I call my pop-up, said, "Hey, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? I think I'm gonna drive down and come see you guys." And he said, "Actually, we're on our way to Pittsburgh. Your uncle just passed away." Now, my uncle at the time, he's only 30, 35 years old. He died in this freak car accident where he parked his car and it exploded. And my dad said one thing that really changed my life there. He said, you never know how short life can be. And I realized that I didn't want my life story to be started working at 18, made a lot of money because I knew that one day I was going to be a father and I wanted a story that my kids could look up to. And so the next day I went into my boss's office and said, "Hey, I want to put in my 2 weeks. I'm going to go enlist in the military."
Wow, just like that. I mean, where did
Just,
the
yeah.
idea come from? Why did the idea come from to go to military? Is that in your
So
family? Is that something you wanted to do?
So it is in my family. Yeah, my dad served in the Air Force for 35 years. My uncles
Okay.
were in the Marines. My grandpa was in the Air Force. But it was a specific memory that I went back to. Remember as a kid, they had take your, or not take your kid to work day, but career day, where parents would come in and they talk about what their jobs were. Now, my dad was a flight engineer, so he was the guy on the airplane that made sure everything worked as it was flying. But I didn't know that. All I knew he was in the plane, so I thought he was the pilot, right? So in second grade, we did career day, and my dad was coming in, and I was bragging to all of the kids. I said, "My dad's in the Air Force. He flies airplanes. Like, he's way cooler than your dad." And I'm like sitting on this
Competitive in the
memory,
second grade.
right? Of course. But I'm sitting on this memory as I'm up in northern Jersey knocking on doors. And I said, "You know what? Like, that's how I want my kids to look at me. I want my kids to like have that admiration and brag to all the other kids that they've got the coolest dad. That's not going to come from me doing this. I need to go do something else."
Wow, that's cool. Yet, I'm sure you would say that door-to-door sales experience has been extremely valuable throughout your life. That skill of learning to sell and talk to people has been incredibly valuable.
100%. Because the thing that people don't realize is that when you go out to start any business, you're going to hit so many no's. Because no matter what your business is, you have to hit sales at some point. There's some part of your business that has to sell, and you're going to hit 100 no's. When I was doing wholesaling, I hit 123 no's until one just really struck and knocked it out of the park. But going door to door, you will hit more no's than anyone else, because outside of telemarketers, a door-to-door salesman is your least favorite person in the world. And so now I really learned to not listen to those no's, but instead accept them as a step closer to the next yes.
I to add to that, I did door-to-door sales myself for 5-ish years, probably more. No, we're looking at 7 years. And one of the metrics for all of you listening is the best salesmen out there get 12 no's before getting a sale. On average, the average person will take 1 or 2. And so, just like our guest is saying, it really boils down to how many no's can you get and still find a way to move forward from the same person, not just from other people each time. So that's really cool.
No, 100%. I teach a small group of people who are looking to wholesale. And we were having this same discussion yesterday. I said, you know, what it really boils down to is how many no's are you willing to take in order to achieve your dreams? And if it's a small number, that's okay. Like, it's okay to be comfortable and happy where you are. Don't think that you have to go on this this journey and climb this mountain. But if your goal is to be at the top of the mountain, to be at this point that you want to hit, understand, like, you are going to move some boulders. You are going to hit so many obstacles. You're going to hit hundreds of no's before you get there.
Love it. Here, so what's next? When you publish this book, you got it out there. Is the intent to do more coaching? I know you do. You help a lot of veterans in particular, right? Invest in real estate and get off the ground and build wealth that way, which we admire you doing that. Is that what's down the road? I mean, what's the next mountain for you to climb?
To be perfectly honest with you, I've stopped trying to guess where Never Outworked is going, because every time I try to guess at, God's plan in this, he shows me something greater. The thing that I do know I need to do is continue to push myself, because when you start reaching these feats that you never really thought you could be in before, understand the thing that you have to do is push yourself into uncomfortable spaces. So I've gotten to speak on stage at a couple different places, which was really uncomfortable for me at first, but it was a skill that I needed to learn, something I needed to get comfortable with. Prior to 8 months ago, I didn't have social media. Like, I had zero internet footprint, so pushing myself further into that world is an uncomfortable space. Right now I'm training for 2 Ironman races, not because I love to run, but because it pushes me into a place where I know I have to really try hard and move myself forward. So the thing that I know right now is every single day I have to wake up, push myself in the gym, get into the word, journal, and then attack the day. And as I've done that, more and more has shown, especially with speaking. The more that I've spoken out, more that I've posted, the more that I've, like, gone on stage, people have reached out to me and said, like, hey, what you said really hit me. Like, hey, this message is really helpful. And that so continually shows that I'm moving in the right direction. But for me to guess where it's going, like, I've tried it already a couple times and I was wrong both times. So I've stopped trying to guess. I've just keep moving in the direction he's showing me.
Cool. We usually ask our guests to kind of throw out some wild goal and then invite them to come back on the show when they accomplish that. Invitations to you. I mean, what's that? Like, Kelly, right? Kelly Cardenas.
Yep.
Just as an example, I like to use him a lot. He says, I want to speak to an audience of 100,000.
Okay.
And I said, Kelly, when that happens, I'll be on the front row, I promise. And then afterwards, you're coming back as a guest on my podcast. So something along those lines, Justin. I mean, is there something that's just out there? Put it out there and say, this is what I'd like to do. I mean, maybe it's doing a TED Talk. Maybe it's doing, I don't know. Is there something like that you just...
There's 2 that come to mind. First, I'll tell you about my brother. So my brother, he worked at Lockheed in Syracuse, and he's a software engineer, graduated from RIT and kind of jumped right into that and realized that he hated the monotony of the 9 to 5. And especially, at a government company like Lockheed, it's very like structured, and saw what I was doing with my life and decided to quit his job and drive from New York to California to live and work with me until like he got on his feet and got his like entrepreneurial venture set up. So one of my biggest goals this year is to help make that happen so that he like go finds his own place to live in California and just is self-sufficient, as a young man in his 20s. Like that would really fill my heart with joy.
So
The
at what
other,
point would you know that you've accomplished that? When he has
well,
has his
it
own
really comes down
place,
to income. Yeah.
has
So
his own
once you,
place and has some income.
exactly.
So
Once you created consistent
it'd be
income
cool
and
to invite him on the podcast later this year. Have him come and tell us his journey. So tell him that, yeah, I got a podcast interview for you. You need to keep track of what you're doing so you can retell the story. That's one of the things we love. And some of our best our customers, our best guests have been able to say, look, this is where I was. This is what happened. I mean, similar things to what you've done, right? And in the end, people are able to take out nuggets of how to be better people, how to be better at business, how to be more profitable with what they're doing and enjoy what they're doing. So I love that. Anyways, that was one. So for your brother, what's the other one?
Then the second one is, so I went to college at the Air Force Academy, and every year they have what's called the National Character and Leadership Symposium, where they bring in all of these speakers. Like when I was there, we had Chuck Yeager and Simon Sinek come and speak, along with like accomplished military and business owners. I would love the opportunity to go speak there, to be able to speak to the 23-year-old me that was once in that seat and be able to speak to that audience and kind of leave that impact of, hey, you are so much more capable than you think.
Awesome. I love that one. And that's going to happen. That'd be great. So mark it down. When you get that call, the next call is to Jason saying, Jason, I got my invite. Got my invites. You got to put me on the podcast again. I'd love that. So we're running out of time with our time together. We've really appreciated it, Justin. It's been one of the better interviews we've ever had. It's just, you're personable, you know what you're doing, you're competitive, yet you're not. You seem kind of laid back and just kind of how you're talking and stuff, but I can tell you have that edge. That's cool. Everyone, we're going to put contact information for Justin in the show notes. Of course, you can go to Amazon and get his book, Never Outworked. In the event you have some other, special kind of contact information, Justin, to get that to us, we'll put it in the show notes.
Sounds
good. Scott, back to you.
And just like Jason said, if you want to connect with either Jason or I, you can find us on any of the social media platforms or shoot us an email. All the links are down below. And if you like the show, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps.
And subscribe. And subscribe.
Yeah, and subscribe. Last, remember, mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.